All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Friday, November 27th. So, shortened trading day today. And, I didn't want to jinx it, of course, to really kind of mention it too many times. But these Fridays after Thanksgivings, they could be a nice, fun day to trade more often than not. Again, it's not 100%. But sometimes to the downside, sometimes to the upside. I've seen it different ways in over my trading career. But this was a fun day to trade. The momentum, you could kind of tell like what kind of day that you were going to get when you saw all these speculative, the SPACs, they were up all decently this morning. So it just looked like we were going to have some continuation to the upside. So let's talk a little bit about that momentum, that the market momentum continues, and some mini rotations out there too. Let me just zoom in here a little bit just to make sure that you can see. And of course, risk disclaimer. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. But the price action, we've seen now a couple days in the beginning of this week where more value and the small caps outperformed, and then it kind of switched to back to growth. And we saw the same thing last week too. So it's one of those things where what I've been saying is I like to have a little bit of exposure to not necessarily like, both. Well, it is kind of both groups, but not. I want to have exposure to, quality names. So I don't have to be all in value. I don't have to be all in growth, and I don't think that is for me like a good recipe to try to do that and to try to time the market perfectly. It's very difficult to do that. But you can kind of read some things a little bit and how this market has been going. That when some things I think get super extended, as some of those value names did earlier in the week. Remember the banks went really, hard to the upside. Traditional energy really went decently to the upside, and you kind of just had to, put on your, hey, don't be too greedy hat with some of those names that were really running, take some profits, and then look for some other groups that may actually break out of their near-term consolidation. So that played out very well. And all in all, now that November is concluding, it's been a pretty tremendous month. We do at Tribeca Trade Group, we do a trading contest every month. And where we basically everybody picks one name, whether it's an ETF or whether it's a single stock name, international, but it's a buy and hold strategy. And I don't think I've ever seen the group performance is up as much as it is for November. I think we're up like 36% as a group. I mean, it's insane. I mean, this has been an insane month, and it's been a lot of fun, right? And it's been challenging too, because if you get stuck kind of in the names that are being rotated out of, it could be a little bit frustrating for you. But if you're a momentum trader and if you are a nimble trader, that's something that we've been talking about, like in our weekend videos, to try to be fairly nimble. So that you can kind of make some of these moves as the market changes, right? And go with the market, don't fight the market. So let's talk a little bit about that price action for the day. And like I said, the Qs did outperform. They were up close to 1% for the day. I think at one point they were up like 1.2%, but they came in a little bit. Interesting that the bonds were really strong today too. I think they're trying to find a direction at this point. Kind of the same thing as I mentioned with different areas of the market. The bonds are kind of doing that to some extent, right? We'll talk a little bit about this, and then I've got some trades, some trade ideas for next week, which of course we'll be going through all of that in the member. We do two videos over the weekend. We do a macro video that kind of talks about what I like to refer to as above the hood, right? Price and trend, and below the hood, indicators and internals, and things like sentiment, which we know is running pretty hot right now. But here's just a chart of TLT. It's kind of bouncing around the November value area. So it'll be interesting what direction this goes in here. But I think it's too early to kind of call it. we had this breakdown. We explored the top. So here was the break below. Then we recaptured the value area and or November value, and then we pushed into resistance at the top of value. We also came back down a little bit, and like I said, bonds were strong today. So I don't know, just because bonds were strong today, that I can make any conclusion about where they're going, because they're right smack in the middle of the value area. So for now, they're range bound, right? And, once they break above 161.65 or below 158.26, then we've got something. But for now, they're kind of middle of the road. Even though some look at the 200-day moving average and say, hey, they're in a downtrend officially at this point. All right, let's talk a little bit about as much as sentiment is running hot, and I think that some areas of the market are pretty juiced. They've made some major moves. The S&P is still kind of grinding higher. The trend is higher. We're above all short-term moving averages. We're above the November value area. We did pause out at this R1, right, which is 3633 and a half. There's a long way to get to that next Venom, which is R2 3855. And if we go to the 1 hour too, one of the things that I tweeted out earlier in the week was that, hey, we made it all the way through the value area. So actually, like Wednesday through Friday for the overall S&P, it kind of just went sideways. A lot of consolidation around that top of value for the week, 3627. Now, Qs really picked up later in the week. This was a chart, we send out every day as well, like a chart of the day. I send out the S&P roadmap, which is the market webs and how they're lining up on the 1 hour and daily chart, as well as the 5-minute chart. But the Qs were one of my, was the chart of the day a couple days ago, because they started to lean out of this consolidation and higher. One of the things that we talked about going into the week was that the Qs were kind of coiled up here, right? If we zoom out, we talked about how slim this value area was for the week, right? It's an interesting concept, maybe one that you may or not be familiar with, depending on how many times you listen to my videos. But when these value areas get super slim, usually a big move is coming. And notice that earlier in the week I talked about, hey, we're testing a breakdown, but sometimes the moves, the price action kind of fakes us out a little bit. So we did get that fake out where we started to go lower, and then like a trampoline, we bounced, and we got. It's so easy to get, being that the value area is so narrow. It's very easy for you to kind of cross it a couple times, and we did that. And here was the fake out, even 2 fake outs this week, and then we sliced through this value area no problem, and we basically closed very close to the high of the day. So what other, there's a lot of things to go over here, and I'll try to keep it brief. But one of the things I would be a little bit cognizant of for the next couple weeks is, that Tesla is going to be added to the S&P 500. Keep in mind, they did not announce one name. At least I haven't heard of it yet, and I don't think that we've got that we're going to get the announcement of one name being kicked out of the S&P. So that means to make room for Tesla, they're going to have to sell all of the other names in the S&P 500. So of course, the bigger weights, which are many of them are like the FANG stocks, right? They're going to have to be sold a little bit, right? And a lot of this is it's anticipation of the actual trade, right? There's traders who work on portfolio desks at the major banks, and what they do is they pre-position for this trade that won't happen to around quadruple witching, right? So keep that in mind, that that you're going to start to see some of these moves take place. It's going to be harder for these names to rally because there's going to be a little bit of a weight around their neck, which is, the indexers are selling the whole S&P to make room for Tesla. So just one of the things that I wanted to mention in this video. Let's move on from there And let's talk about some of the sector moves. Uh, Nice to see biotech. Biotech kind of, we haven't really seen biotech lead that much, but this really got going pretty nicely to the upside. And just like that, you got a breakout in the biotechs, right? So again, this is the equally weighted biotech ETF. The small companies get the same weight as the large companies. And look at this thing break out. So, it was kind of moving slower. Remember after the election, the biotech names got going, and then has just been a slow grind higher. But man, they were really bought up today, up close to 4% for the biotechs. Also, some of the just a lot of high growth momentum areas. You could see the XBI was also up. Interesting that the gold miners rallied a little bit today. Perhaps an oversold bounce a little bit. The software names did very well today too. They were up 1.6% for the day. Also solar, which for some reason, why don't I see solar in here? Yeah, solar was up 1.1%, but certain names had momentum in that group. And yeah, a lot of newer IPO names too. We saw obviously this Palantir's been on fire. Kind of gave back a little bit of those gains, but I mean, hit a high of 33. If, like I said, if you're a nimble trader, you can kind of take advantage of going long and then actually maybe playing a little bit to the short side in some of these things. Snow was very strong today too, right? That's all the way up to 328, right? So has made a nice move since this thing found support, bottom of value, and then broke out. Gave a little bit of consolidation on this candle. In the last 3 or 4 days, it's been off to the races in this name. So I'll talk a little bit about what I traded today. This was a name that I talked about. I did not do a video on Wednesday, but this is a name that I've been watching for a while. And I hit this one pretty nice today. This was up 10% today. And I hit a target. I did not get 170. That was my next target. But this was a hell of a trade for me today, right? So if we go into our trades channel, so yeah, gravy. I mean, I put this thing on for 144 on Wednesday. Sorry, I always want to say Friday, but today's Friday, obviously, and that one day off that we had yesterday is kind of confusing me a little bit. Net was a really nice one as well. I own this in multiple accounts. I own this in my trading account. I also own this in the TTG trend portfolio. We've been holding on to this one for a while now. And this one's out to new highs again. So really, really nice, some of these names. And, keep in mind, you can't own every single one of these high flyers. So you really kind of have to, try to manage some of these names well. I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 stocks that I'm watching for next week. I like what's going on in a few different areas, but today is also a great day to was a great day to sell a name or two if you wanted to kind of get your portfolio back to adding to a little bit more cash and making sure, like I always like to be a net seller. When we have a really strong week, as we did this week, and kind of start to really accumulate and make my cash balance larger, as I'm seeing so many things kind of just get more and more extended. But I tried trading a little bit of W today. My ultimate target was 270, but I started to see some other trades. So I'm not going to, at this point, add 3 or 4 new trades on, even though if I'm seeing 6 or 7 good setups, you have to pick and choose. And this was just a day trade for me anyway. But I just said, you know what, let me get out of this thing, and let me focus on some other things that are really moving. We saw some option activity in service now. Again, just for me, watching some option activity on the tape, I don't really care if they know anything. I'm just looking. I'm reading the tape for ideas. And Service now is a high quality name, and it's trying to break out here. So I know exactly where my stop is going to be, which is just inside value. So just inside 517, so a little bit lower than that. And I'm playing a breakout now in Service now. And again, it's not extended, right? It's kind of been consolidating for a while. It's a slower mover. So I'm happy to sit in a stock position in this one in a quality name. What else? Apps is another one. Now this is a more of a high momentum name, right? But this thing's trying to break out too. So no breakout for this yet. It did close above value, which is a good sign. But I'm looking for this thing to to take off for next week. So we'll see. Again, we're going to need that overall, continuation. Like I said, I do think this market is getting a bit extended. So you kind of have to be mindful of that. And yeah, I mean, we know that sentiment right now is running very, very hot. So, I think if we do some type of consolidation, I think it'll be really good for the market. Now, the other thing, of course, is we don't know how much longer this market is going to, have this. How many times have I said momentum in this video? But how much longer is this market going to continue to have this momentum? I don't have the answer to that, but what I'm doing is making sure that I'm taking targets along the way. Someone asked me about net. They're like, "Is it a good place to sell it?" I'm like, "Well, I took a couple targets in my swing trade in this thing, so yes, I'm selling into strength. For a day where it's up 6.8%." That's a day where I want to be locking in some profits, but you got to leave a runner on in this market, right? Because we don't know how long these trends are going to last, right? Eventually, right? What will happen is when the market wants to, come in and we do have a down day, you're going to get hit a little bit, right? But if you've been making money all along this way, it's natural to have that happen to you. Like I think more beginner traders, they want to always try to pick the top of the market or pick the bottom of the market, find the bottom of the market. In my experience, it's better to be long as much of the trend as you can be and not worry about trying to time the absolute top. Because if you do that, right, and the market still goes higher, then you're missing out on that crazy momentum that we're experiencing right now. So that's kind of the name of the game. It's a little bit of a fine art, right? And taking some profits in some things and looking for some newer setups and realizing that yes, you're probably eventually I will have a down day, but we don't know when that's going to happen when the market pulls back. So again, the goal is to capture the majority of the trend and realize that you're going to give a little bit back at the top, right? All right, so that's the kind of the thoughts for that. And yeah, I mean, we know like the fear and greed index right now is a 91. So, you know, so you have to kind of balance that, right? That hot sentiment with, being able to making sure that you're able to still participate, but making sure that your risk isn't over the tips of your skis, right? So that's the whole name of the game. Let's talk a little bit about a couple of the names that I have my eye on for next week, right? So even though this group is super, super hot, right? This is XPEV. This is one of the Chinese EV names. Look at how this thing is consolidating up here. So I'm not ready to start a long position because it's still extended. But the more that this thing consolidates, right, and doesn't fall back and give a lot back, the more that I begin to like it. The Chinese Internet Group was kind of took the week off a little bit until today, but this is starting to move nicely out of this. I don't know if you would call that maybe more of a triangle pattern than anything else. And in this group, we saw some PDD calls, right? Remember this thing gapped up nicely, it gapped up and then continued on after earnings. Well, it's consolidating here, so a lot of times what we'll see is consolidation and then a continuation in the direction of the trend. So I like this name a lot. Right? I like SE. I like the fact that this SE is being really quiet, the C limited, right? Look at the consolidation that this thing is putting in, right? So I think this thing takes a leg higher too. That's another name that I'm long. TDOC, so something again a little bit different. Now this is again more of a stay-at-home type trade, but you have the 200-day moving average here. If you want to go long stock here, and then use a stop of that 200-day moving average, what could be easier than that, right? And then, of course, you could look to take some of this trade off, maybe at the 50-day moving average, and then further up at 216. All right, so I think that's an interesting one too. So, again, you kind of have to pick and choose. I did not go long PDD or TDOC because I want to be mindful of my exposure. But what we do is we kind of prepare for next week. DuPont's another name too. So again, something a little bit different in case that we start to rotate a little bit more into value or material names. I know this is a slower mover, right? It's not as fun and exciting as one of those small cap growth names, but it put in a double inside day here. So again, I think this continues to go in its trend, and you got 66.73. Now, the nice thing about this, if you want to play options in this, they're not expensive, right? They're not going to be as expensive as a NEO or an XPEV or a fuel cell energy, those types of things, right? And that's the beauty of this market right now, is that you're seeing groups consolidate for a couple days, and then other groups participate, and then momentum returns to something. Could possibly return to something like this. So what I try to do for members all day long is just kind of post where we're seeing option activity and where we're seeing some good setups, right? So here I'm going through a couple. But this goes on continuously through the day. As I find these, I'm posting them into our Market Web's chart setups, right? Because again, I can't take every one of these trades. I got to keep my eye on the tape so I can produce, some really good ideas for you guys. All right, and then finally, the performance for the week. Wow, I mean, look at this, right? SPY up 1.7% for the week. IWM outperformed up another 4%. Qs finished up 2.3%. But you could see, I mean, even the international areas are strong right now. EEM plus 2.6%. IFA, which is International Developed Markets, which that group saw a lot of inflows this week. TLT was flat and GLD was down. So again, look at the risk on here on the left. Keep in mind, PBW was up over 10% last week too. So clean energy. Again, another case, like if you are a trend trader and can continue with trends, this clean energy has been amazing, right? So if you're good at sticking with these trends, it's been something really, really. Oops, I got the wrong one here. I mean, look at this thing go. I mean, so yes, it's definitely extended here. So, but really impressive. So let me move on, because I could talk about these things for a while. I mean, even OIH had a good week today, this week too. So you did have the energy names continued to act very well. Solar was up 11.8% as well. Keep in mind, this is 5 days, so I'm capturing a little bit of last week in there too. So 5-day performance, not just this week. All right, and then you had things like, look at the robotics and automation ETF. That's a new one for the week. That was up 4% for the week. Steel was also up 9% for the week. Metals and mining, retail was up 6.2%. And then on the underperformers list, you had a lot of low volatility areas of the market, right? So again, I would classify the performance as pretty risk on. Right, you had consumer staples, they underperformed. REITs underperformed. Healthcare, utilities underperformed. All right, so pretty risk on. And then if you look to the bottom for the international performers, look at Greece, led the country list, up almost 8% for the week. All right, and then a lot of some emerging markets in there as well. All right, guys, that's it for this week's video. Have a great weekend. It was nice, again, fun these days after Thanksgiving, the half days, they're usually fun like this, and I love it when it works so well. We're almost at the end of November, so I'll be releasing all P&L and so forth once we get there. But, this has been a tremendous month, and, we'll continue. Now, I think you have to be smart with the way that you're trading. with sentiment this hot and just realize that the market is probably at this point priced to perfection when we've got sentiment this hot and so many areas participating. Again, not a negative thing, but we're probably due for a little bit of consolidation. And if we do get a little bit of pullback, what I've said before too is, that will probably entice people to buy the dip a little bit. I know that's very optimistic thinking, but just trading the market in front of me at this point, right? That's the best that we can do rather than make short-term predictions. All right, guys, have a great weekend, and you can look out for those videos from me for TTG members later in the weekend. And if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, get involved. This has been an amazing year for myself and Tribeca Trade Group members, and we look to continue that.